We tell women all the time to silence ourselves, to quiet ourselves, to shrink ourselves. And I'm done with that.
Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we get real about what it takes to succeed, whether it's in business, life, or both. I'm talking to game-changing and visionary women who've broken barriers, built empires, and redefined success on their own terms. They'll share their strategies, secrets, and the no BS advice you need to rise to the top. I'm your host, Jennifer Justice, also known as JJ. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Today, we have Daisy Auger-Domínguez. She is a chief people officer and an author, and we're going to hear all about her books and everything that she does today. Welcome, Daisy.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jennifer.
I am excited. It's a very timely topic. We're going to learn, you are going to learn, A, not to get burnout, change your whole outlook of the hustle and how hard you need to work. And you're also going to hear all about what is going on right now in these DEI programs and how we're dealing and, how we can cope and deal with it. Welcome, Daisy. So let's start a little bit about your background and your chief people officer, how you got there, et cetera.
Sure. Well, I started my career actually as a credit risk analyst at Moody's Investor Service, and I worked there for 12 years. I was a credit risk analyst for 6 years. I also ran our corporate foundation. So before we called it ESG and social impact, I was managing philanthropic works for the corporation. And then in really a stroke of somewhat, you may call it luck, I was asked to run the company's first diversity and inclusion function. And that's when I moved into HR for the first time in my career. And I went in kind of.
What did that mean to them, by the way?
Yeah.
Like, what was the goal?
Well, you'll appreciate this because the goal was really to resolve one of the demands that had been made in a legal lawsuit. So really, that's really what it was. No one told me that at the time. I didn't learn that till months.
Right. So they had to do it.
They had to do it. There was a lawsuit, and one of the remediations and demands was to create a function that would focus on diversity and inclusion. We didn't call it equity back then. And our CFO at the time was the president of our foundation. So she would see me present to the board, present to our organization the works that we were doing. Many of our programs, we used to sort of jokingly say they were preparing the future geeks of America, right? They were focusing on math and economics, and they were focused on girls and students of color. We were trying to build that pipeline of talent. And so she put my name in the hat. And I had no idea even that these, back then, this was in 2006, 2007, right? These functions were not as alive, if you will, as they are right now. And frankly, I didn't want to go into HR. I, like everybody else, thought HR was, just the place you go to when you're in trouble. It's like it never.
Right. Yeah.
But I was intrigued by the opportunity. I was, of course, one of the few employees of color in the organization. I was the one that would go to the Black MBA conferences, the Asian MBA conferences, the Hispanic MBA conferences. And I took the opportunity as, from a place of curiosity and interest. And it was also a promotion. It was, it was my first VP role. So there was that. But I quickly learned to your question, I quickly learned that nobody knew what they wanted to do. And I certainly didn't have the expertise or the background other than having been an employee of color, or having seen how women and people of color had been quietly sidelined and marginalized for many years. But I just took it upon myself to learn and to read everything I could read, to meet every expert in the space that existed at the time. And from there, I've moved on. I went on to Time Warner. I've worked at Disney, at Google, at Viacom, and most recently at Vice Media. And all of those roles were progressively more senior executive roles, always in HR, always with diversity and inclusion and talent as a focus. And several years ago, before I joined Vice, I decided that I had done the work of diversity and inclusion, and I didn't want to be sidelined anymore. I didn't want to be the diversity lead.
Right. How ironic, right? You're trying to help people not be sidelined, but by being a DEI person, you felt sidelined.
Exactly.
Talk about that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, there was very little integration, right? I had to constantly have my head of talent acquisition bring me to the table so that I could speak about what we were doing with, diversifying talent pipelines, our development programs, our learning and development. I would constantly have to go and sit down with those subject matter experts and say, okay, can we not create these programs as just for Black people and just for brown people? Can we just create a leadership program that's for everybody, right? That creates better leaders in an inclusive way, right? I was trying to do all of that integration because I would find out about programs afterwards and wonder, well, why was diversity not included? Why was my team not brought into the table? And it was because nobody thought about it, right? No, it was always this nice function that's there and this nice lady that's trying to do nice things, but this is not core to the business. And so it was constantly having to explain myself and demand the attention that this work needed as a business driver. And that was what was hard for a lot of folks, because people in my role often didn't speak about the business. And because I had come from the business, and this is, apropos to your podcast, I was like, this work is certainly about demanding human dignity and meaning and impact for all workers. And also it's good business. This is about making sure that you're bringing in the folks that are going to generate the new ideas, that are going to, come up with the creative solutions. This is about also people that are going to create the products that your customers want in a way that comes from not just a place of known understanding because you've lived it, which is important, but also from a place of expertise and talent.
Right. So addressing like the customers and consumers' needs from a business perspective, right? It's like all the data and research is there.
Yes.
That says when you have more diverse teams, you make more money,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It is. And
you put more money in women's hands. We spend more money, and it puts trillions of dollars into the economy.
It is.
Right.
It is wealth generation broadly spread out. That's what it is.
Right. And so did you feel like you had this problem in every single company you went to?
Yes. And the disconnect between being wanted, right? Being hired, being told, goodness, when I joined Google, I remember I was told, come so that you can change the world with us. Literally, that is what my hiring manager told me. And I remember being a bit skeptical. I was like sort of side-eyeing with my husband. I was like, he just told me we're going to change the world. But you can't help but be excited about it, right? You can't.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's like there's promise there. And they want me, right? They want me to come and do this work. But inevitably in every organization, always, there were always good people, there were always good intentions, but in every organization, it was always sort of the honeymoon stage of, yay, you're here, do this work. And then inevitably it's like, no, but you don't get to go to that meeting. But no, like, strategic planning, no, we don't really bring diversity to strategic planning. Like, how does that not get integrated? It was your budget. Your budget gets to be a third, if you're lucky, of what everybody else gets, right? It was always this less than, and this sense that as I was desperately trying to bring more seats to the table, I had to desperately try and keep my own, right?
Yeah.
working in that cognitive dissonance, it's exhausting.
Yeah. No, I know. I saw in the music industry as women and being like the only woman in the room. It's like, well, you want to stay the only woman in the room. So I always quote like Julia Louis-Dreyfus in Veep, when who's her minion, Gary or whatever, who's like, talk about being a woman when you run for president. She's like, no one wants to hear that. It's like, you can't say it. Like if you do, you have to like take in the information, use it to your advantage, and then, go underground and, build a matriarchy. but the system works for them. Why would they want to change it?
They don't. And it's, and it is this constant disconnect of, let's come and bring change. Like fundamentally, and I wrote about, I spoke about this in my TEDx. My dad, his advice, right? Immigrant, always was like, work really hard, keep your head down, make sure that like he was always talking to me about being protected. That's all he could summon. And I would always joke with him. I'm like, Papi, literally, my job is not to keep my head down. My job is to break things. My job is to change things for the better. But in that process of changing things for the better, it's you're dealing with opposition. You're dealing, to your point, of people who want change, but they don't really want change. We're like, it's like, we want this, but we
want change if it doesn't affect them.
Yeah, we want this optically, right? Like, give me a few that are great, but like, I still can hire who I want to, right? I still can, give that internship to my neighbor's friend. I can still do all of that, but you make sure that you're not lowering the hiring bar for other people.
Right. Exactly. And in all that time that you were doing this, right, 2006 to now, did you see a real change?
I've seen different bouts of change, right? I've certainly seen, and this is, we're in this stage now with all of the DEI backlash, but I've seen ebbs and flows of DEI, right? When the economy's doing well and it's like a big war for talent, everybody's out to get the mix of talent that's out there, folks spending a lot of money, a lot of D&I programs initially really focused always on the HR side. Eventually, then it became, this is actually good for business. So, right. So then you started seeing multicultural marketing initiatives, right? You started seeing multicultural product development initiatives, right? And then, when there's I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I started writing to DEI practitioners on LinkedIn and some of my social media posts telling folks, hey, funds are going to be depleted now. Your functions are going to be the first ones to get cut, but don't worry, there will be another upswing. So protect what you can protect. But little did I know that in mid-May, George Floyd would be brutally murdered.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, all of the programs that had been super cut, like in an instant, all of a sudden people found money. It's like all of a sudden people were like, oh, wait, we're rich again. We can fund these programs and we should invest in these. And, and you're looking at, again, this cognitive dissonance, and it is just this reactionary mode. That's what's happened in a lot of places, Jennifer, is that there have been a lot of really great practitioners, I believe, and I have seen that have built these practices, right? Because everyone talks about DEI now, like DEI this and DEI. I was like, you're using it as a brand, not as what it truly is, right? Which is a set of practices and behaviors and systems and structures and organizations to try and build a true meritocratic system, right? Like that's always been the intent of this work. And so there's been a lot of organizations that have built this within the inner workings, if you will, the operational workflows. But there have been a lot of others that have just like sidelined and minimized it so much that it's been easy to cut, as we've seen recently. Yeah,
exactly. Do you find that the people that are cutting are the people that you would expect to cut?
I've been surprised by some, quite frankly. I think, listen, it's easy to say those that are cutting these programs never really cared about it, right? Like, but you can say that about other organizations as well that are not doing it. I think that some of the organizations that I'm seeing in, like the Targets, right? Organizations that are so consumer facing, it just seems like such a bad move, right? Like, how are you going to essentially tell the people that are spending their hard-earned money in your organization that they don't matter, right? Because that's essentially what they're saying.
Do you, with all of these, right, and you've seen them, do you feel there's ever a time when there is more backlash to having the program than not having the program?
Yes. And you see that. You see the backlash to having the program when, I've been honest and, and upfront with my own DEI practitioner friends and colleagues. Like, we haven't done a good job of explaining what this work is, right? We like other workplace terms, like we've gotten into all of these terms that feel loosey-goosey to people, or like they're just like, oh, well, if this is for women, then this, and I'm a man, this isn't for me. You're like, no, no, no. Like, this is for everybody. But yes, you may lose some of your entitlement that you have come to believe that it is, it is only for you. But if you have women in your life, daughters, mothers, sisters, like, this is beneficial to everyone. And we haven't done a really good job of showing to everyone what's on the other side of this. And I think that for organizations that feel like these programs have become too woke, right? Or have led to, and this is what I've been hearing recently, like, they've led to employees being fragile and too emotional, and too sensitive. I was like, no, like, I think what you're arguing is that the younger workers that are coming into these workplaces do not have the skills that that many of us did initially, because many of us went into workplaces where people were mentoring us and coaching us and training us on the job. And now most of these young people have been coming into workplaces where they started like this on video, right? And they're not learning the skills. But that's not fragility, right? That's a lack of skills that can be taught. What you were saying about fragility and feelings, and I hear this often, it was just like in people's feelings. I was like, no, it's actually quite a basic need to feel, to demand dignity and respect and a sense of meaning and impact at work, right? Everybody wants that. That's not DEI. Like, that's
Right, right. But that is the old school way of doing stuff. In the entertainment industry, people are still like required to work 24/7. And it's like, no one's curing cancer because a song didn't got put out on time on it. It's ridiculous how self-important they all are. And
yeah, you get
and
shamed.
so,
And
the total toxicity and abuse in workplaces there
yes.
is just makes finance look like you're working at a preschool because of laws actually instilled in different
Mm-hmm.
states. They've had to not do and say certain things. And then people, I think, when you come up and, in this generation, our kids, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who like are taught to have more confidence in themselves and importance in this world,
Mm-hmm.
then, when somebody comes at you at 45 years old and tells you you're worthless, et cetera, then no, it's not fragility. That's like confidence. It's even hard for like me and, to growing up in that patriarchal system of like, we're going to beat it out of you and, get toughen up. And there are times that, I think people are a little too sensitive, in particular if there's a female boss. I can be talking like this and I'm yelling, where a guy would be like, don't do that. And they're like, okay,
Yeah,
it's
that's
like,
right. That's right. Because
seen it.
we expect men to be, we still, even with everything we've learned, everything we've read, we still expect men to behave in an aggressive, right, in a strong leadership mode. And when women behave that way, we're just like, wait, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not how that makes me feel uncomfortable when you do that. I was like, oh, but you weren't uncomfortable when he yelled at you.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the difference? And
Yeah.
we're still are grappling with that. And to your point about the music industry and what you've experienced, and and I experienced, and because of our being in the same generation, is that we thought that was work, right? Like, for some reason we felt like that when we signed our employment contract, we signed away our rights to be respected and to be valued,
Exactly.
right? And that's never been true.
Yeah, and it's not okay, and it's never been
That's
okay.
right.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I want to move a little bit, and I know a little bit. I want to talk about your books, right? Well, let's talk a little bit about your first book, and then I really want to talk a little more about your second.
Well, it's funny because my husband was asking me the other day if my book has been banned yet. And I'm like, well,
Can't believe
I haven't heard.
Julianne Moore's book, Strawberry Freckle Faces Band. What?
I mean, like, what is
Come on. Anybody who doesn't like put that in a library should like just excuse themselves.
it's literature. So my first book is called Inclusion Revolution: The Essential Guide to Dismantling Racial Inequity in the Workplace. And
I'm shocked that is not banned.
that's what we're joking. We're like, it's going to get banned any moment now. But it's really a management book. And that's what I say about both of my books. I've written two modern management books because I wanted to write the books that I wish I had when I started doing this work. And like I said earlier, I read everything I could when I started doing, when I took on my first diversity and inclusion role, and I wanted to learn academically, right? I'm a failed academic, right? So I just wanted to learn what are researchers saying? What are companies saying? And inevitably, in all of these stories and all of these tips and advice that I would get, it was advice that felt very much like for a white man, right? And I would often think, I was like, well, if I do that, people are going to respond differently, right? If I show up in a meeting and occupy all my space and demand all these things, people are going to look like, what's Daisy coming up with right now? And I wanted to write a book with from the lens and the voice of someone who knows, hey, listen, to navigate workplaces, this is what it looks like, right? And we still should be demanding, all of us, whether you're black, white, brown, whatever color you are, we should all be demanding basic dignity and meaning and impact. And so that my first book, Inclusion Revolution, is essentially kind of an HR toolkit for anyone, beginning with how to source and hire talent, to how to performance manage your talent, to how to conduct humane exits for your team members with a lens on racial equity. And then my second book is still a modern management book, but it's fundamentally about burnout, and it's called Burnt Out to Lit Up: How to Reignite the Joy of Leading People. And I wrote that book because I was burnt crispy after, like many of us, going through the pandemic and leading a global team at a youth media company where I didn't even share daylight hours with some of my team members. And every day was a different crisis that we were managing virtually. I joined Vice Media on May 15th of 2020. 2 weeks later, George Floyd was murdered.
Oh my God. I did your deal. I didn't really realize that.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now thinking back. Yeah. Now I remember.
Like,
Yeah.
this is when all of this happened,
Yeah.
JJ. And it was,
Full disclosure, I am Daisy's
yes,
attorney as well and have done all of her deals, I think,
yes, you're right.
since that one.
That's
Yeah.
right. And I am very lucky for that and grateful. Yeah, but it was, and 2 weeks after that, right, you started seeing all the media companies starting to, on social media, Black employees going out there and saying, I was like, I've been abused, right? This is the toxic environment, right? We went through all of that so quickly. And I did not meet anyone on my team in person for a year, JJ, right? So we were managing all of that. And I would often say, I was like, the minute my phone, whenever I got a call, or I would hear the ding of my phone, like my nervous system was like totally shaking, because I was like, where in the world is someone doing something awful that I need to fix right now? Or is someone is in danger that we need to address? And that led, coupled with several financial crises and economic crises and social crises, it just led to severe burnout. But like most of us, I noticed it in others before I noticed it in me. Right. I have a story in the book where I say that one day I was speaking to an executive coach that was supporting some of our C-suite members. And I went into that call ready for him to give me kind of a full report of, this is what's going on, and this is what we need to work on. And he just paused and looked at me, and he just said, Daisy, I just want to know, what's keeping you up at night? And I remember just like breathing really deeply and looking at him and saying, I was like, like my life right now is like one big fast game of Tetris, right? That's like on expert mode, and I just can't keep the pieces right in line. It's like, but what's keeping me up at night is how angry our leaders are with each other, right? How apathetic they are right now. Like it's what's keeping me up at night is watching the impact of how tired and depleted and exhausted they are, and how that is pushing them to really treat each other poorly and the rest of their teams. And I didn't realize that in that process, I was also burnt out. I was also exhausted. And so I wrote this book because I had seen the light taken out of my most passionate and engaged colleagues, and I wanted to research and write and share, how do we move beyond that? How do we become the leaders that we're meant to be?
Right. So how do we do that?
It's a whole lot of self-reflection. It takes a lot of practices, and the book is full of different practices because as I share often, I was like, what works for me may not work for you, right? But we have to begin by identifying the signs of burnout, right? What does it look like? When I started researching this book, I met with Kate Donovan, who is the host of Fried, the Burnout podcast, and she's become a researcher in the space of burnout, and she defined burnout as the slow decline of normal functioning in every aspect of your life due to chronic stress. And I was like, like, me, right? Like, been there. And then my next question to her was, well, but how do we avoid it? And she said, what she said to me was what has stuck with me. It's like, the challenge is that for people like you and me, JJ, we're hard charging, right? We grew up in professions that demanded a whole lot from us, and we knew that the only way to succeed was just to go, go, go. And so we see the signs, but we just keep on going, right? So we're exhausted. And for me, it wasn't until my body literally gave up that I rested, right? Until like I would always wait until that, like I would only rest until I got sick. Right? Like, it wasn't like, oh, this weekend, let me take a couple of hours to just really rest and replenish and disconnect and come back to myself. No, it's just like we go, go, go. So trying to identify those signs. And I should say that burnout was categorized as a workplace disease by the World Health Organization in 2019. So this isn't something like that's just like cute and a meme that people are like this is an actual disease that has been impacting folks before COVID, right? And that is draining workplaces of the talent and the enthusiasm that you need from workers that are committed and engaged. And the signs are, right, exhaustion, right? This has been scientifically reported widely. It's just, your tank feeling like it's totally empty. A sense of cynicism, right? That sense of like, I've seen this movie play out before. I really could care less, right? That's that sense of the things that you used to love. No, like you no longer have that loving feeling for them anymore, right? Like just like that sense of disconnection. And then the third is loss of productivity, right? Is your inability to be able to make sound decisions, is your inability to actually like complete projects that you used to be able to do super, super quick, like no longer, right? Those are the three signs that I often tell folks, look out for that, not just in your team, but in yourself, right? And that's the beginning. And then from there, it's practices to help you, what I call like release pressure, right? Like, what does it look like? Is it breath work? Is it meditation? Is it a good dance off? Right? Like whatever those things are for you personally, that you can reclaim your time and your energy during the day that allow you to just start, instead of going from go to go to go. It's like, what are those reset moments? Like, I just need a 10-minute reset. I just need sometimes it's just a 5-minute reset. And sometimes it's just going around and, having a chat like this with someone that you haven't talked to in a long time, right? Those are those moments that help us reset so that when we go to the next meeting, big decision that we're making, big contract that you're, trying to complete, right? When we get to that, we are in a different place, and we are not just sucking away. We've given back to ourselves so that we can be there fully. So there's a whole host of practices throughout the book to help you find that for yourself and also for your teams.
Right. It's funny, when I was at law school at Cornell, they told us immediately, because we had a law library that was open 24 hours. And they said, your brain does not work in a way that you can study like nonstop. Like every 45 minutes, after 45 minutes, you're done. You have to take a 15-minute break, because it just won't work. I don't care if you, walk around the library, do something else. We didn't have cell phones at the time, but like, you go get a snack, whatever, take a break, but you have to do that. And that has always been in my brain. Although, when I was working, when I first started as music attorney, I worked 7 days a week. I'd go into the office Saturdays and Sundays. I would see like my friends going to brunch, because we all lived in the same apartment building. I was like, bye. And I would go and work, And now it's like full circle, and it still took me a very long time to do this, but it's like, I do not look at my emails on Saturday and Sunday. And even if I do, if I want to do a little work, I don't email back. I set the account like forward, you know what I mean? So the email sends on Monday morning because I don't want anybody else. And it really pisses me off when people do it and email me. I'm like, if you're not in jail, then why are you emailing me?
It's and you know what?
You know?
It's I say that those are those boundaries, right? When like we've
Yeah.
come to believe that boundaries are like these cute little terms and these memes that you no, it's like those
Yeah.
are the boundaries that protect you and also protect others, right? Like I
Yeah.
love that. That's one of my favorite hacks, right? If I personally feel like if I need to respond to an email and I just feel like it's done, I'm gonna do it. But this doesn't have to go out till Monday morning, or this doesn't have to go out till 9 a.m. tomorrow, right? So that's a perfect way. I have in my email under my signature a little line that says like my working hours may be different from your working hours. You do not have to respond right away, and it's okay, right? You're giving people also freedom to establish their own boundaries. And you and I are in positions where we can do that. And, you know, and because I'm often asked, I was like, what about someone more junior, right? That is harder for them to do that. And I'm like, well, the fact of the matter is that for those of us who are in more senior positions, because we've been accustomed, right? And it's been so ingrained in us, it's harder for us and we expect everybody else to work that way. But sometimes for me, my biggest lessons were from junior team members asking me for those reprieves. Right. I used to have, I had a team member when I was at Vice and I loved her. She was one of my number two. So she was a leader on my team, but she would come to me and I'd be like, hey, listen, this is a top priority. It needs to be done. And she'd just look at me with a straight face and go, Daisy, I have 4 other top priorities that you gave me 2 days ago. Like, which was the real priority right now? And I, you know, like it would be a moment of laughter, right? It was me, but it would also be a moment of like, you know, you're absolutely right. Let's sit down together and let me really recalibrate for you and give you that sense of clarity that you need and also that I need so that we can get this done and not burn the heck out.
Right. Right. No, totally agreed. You know, and those are things that like I was guilty of myself and emailing and doing all of that stuff. And now it's like, you know, and there's also time difference ones, you know what I mean? It's like, it might be 5 o'clock in LA, but it's 8 o'clock here and I'm not responding to you. The other thing is the overuse of people texting me. I'm like, text is for my kids. Like, when did text become work? First of all, it's like, I'm a lawyer too. And we want records of things, you know? It's like, don't text me work things. No, it's one thing for you to be like, oh, catch up on something, but I have people who text me documents and I'm like, no. Yes. Or my favorite too is like, I don't like voicemail and they leave you a voice note. It's like, here's a fun fact. That's a voicemail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Clarity here.
The same thing.
It is.
Yeah. So I send my voice notes that they expire the second I listen to them. So I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't remember what you said.
That's
like,
brilliant. That's
treat me the same way you want to be treated. Like, yeah.
And we forget that, right? Because we get into those modes. One of the practices that I share in the book and that I've been sharing in a lot of my talks is just, right, like we have to just talk it out sometimes. Like be clear and set clear expectations with the person, right? Sometimes it's like a verbal contract. Like, you know, like I do not respond to emails after 8 p.m. So stop emailing me after 8 p.m. because that's my time with my kids. That's my time with my family, right? And I think that for many of us, we felt like to ask for that, we have to explain ourselves. I was like, no, it's like nothing, unless it's an emergency, to your point, I was like, unless someone is like dying, unless someone needs me to go and bail them out of jail, right? Unless that is happening, it's like, it can wait till tomorrow. And sometimes we have to condition others by conditioning ourselves first so that we can get there.
True. Amazing. This has been awesome. I know you got to go and we can't keep you forever. However, we still have one question we ask everyone on the podcast. And that is, what is the worst advice you've ever received?
Oh my gosh. You know, the worst advice I ever received was to stay quiet. I was told, just stay quiet. Don't raise these issues because this is how you lose your job. And as a result of that, I shrunk myself so much that I stopped being me. So I not only say what needs to be said in a thoughtful and respectful way, but I also encourage my teams and everyone that I coach to say the thing. Say the thing, because sometimes that is what will save not just you, but also your organization.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're silencing people as well, there's a resentment to that and it lends a big toxicity, and so it's just not productive whatsoever. I agree. I think there's so many women on this podcast that get that advice. It's unbelievable. And I literally think about the same men that gave us the advice going, did you say that to the man?
No,
You're young, kid,
no.
young buck that you are that's going to take over for you.
So we tell them to talk. We tell them to, go, say it in the meeting, say it abruptly. But we tell women all the time to silence ourselves, to quiet ourselves, to shrink ourselves. And I'm done with that.
Dead. Got to ask for it.
That's right.
Go get it.
And we learned that from you. Those of us who are your clients, we learned that from you.
Yeah, annoyingly so, I'm sure. It's okay. So tell everybody how they can find you, your books, etc.
You can find me on LinkedIn. That's my largest community. My website is Daisy Auger-Domínguez.com. And my books are sold everywhere that books are sold. Inclusion Revolution and Burnt Out to Lit Up. Available everywhere. Amazing. Books are sold.
Thank you so much, Daisy. This has been awesome and very insightful. And thank you for listening to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. Until next time, I'm Jennifer Justice. Thanks for tuning in to Taking Care of Lady Business. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share this episode with a friend who needs that extra push to own their success. And if you want more strategies, stories, and exclusive content, follow us on TikTok at Taking Care of Lady Business, on Instagram at thejustice.dept and Jennifer Justice L, or visit our website at thejusticedept.com. Taking Care of Lady Business is a production of Lady Business LLC and Salutations Media Co.